Hello and welcome to yet another episode of The Exchange. We're here with Dr. Kanchana Ambagahawita from the Payments and Settlements Department, the Deputy Director of the Department of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. And we're going to talk digital payments and the safety around them. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, thanks.
So, Sri Lankans commonly see the Lanka QR payment propping up at expressway toll counters, shops everywhere. Where is the actual state of adoption and where does Lanka QR stand at this point of time?
So Lanka QR, so if I may just explain what Lanka QR in case someone doesn't know what Lanka QR is. Lanka QR is the national QR code standard for payments. So if you're making a payment in Sri Lanka, you have to scan a Lanka QR compliant QR code. So what that means is it's interoperable, which means I can use my app given by any bank or financial institution or any fintech app and scan a Lanka QR code that has been issued by any other financial institution. Now that is what interoperability means. So we have, the code was issued back in 2018, and since then it has been a gradual progress that we've been seeing. So Lanka QR is the new instrument in Sri Lanka's payment landscape. So we have to see that we've had payment cards, debit and credit cards from the 90s. So that is fairly developed. And we also have a lot of cash in Sri Lanka. Cash is fairly accessible in Sri Lanka. So it's in that ecosystem that we are trying to introduce Lanka QR to the country and encourage people to use Lanka QR. Now, why do we encourage people to use Lanka QR? Because Lanka QR is an account-to-account transfer. It's an instant. It leaves the payer's account and goes to the merchant's account instantly. Now, in the other instruments, except of course cash, which is immediate as well, that instant transaction doesn't take place. And also Lanka QR is routed locally through Lanka Pay's network, so that cost becomes lower. So there are many advantages in using Lanka QR, and it's also a low-cost payment instrument that small and medium businesses can easily adopt. Now, we have seen a gradual increase of Lanka QR because it is in this competitive environment that it is trying to pick up. And recently, from about March, we've seen a very healthy increase of about over 17% month on month, because we've been having a lot of aggressive promotion campaigns, and also we have made under 5,000 free for Lanka QR transactions. So we are seeing a fairly healthy growth of late, and we are hoping that that trend continues.
Now you mentioned that any user can use any banking app to make this Lanka QR payment. Now, how well has that idea of a single rail scan with any app sort of set up, gotten to the public? Because there's still a considerable portion of people that are not aware of things like this. How well do you think the public has been made aware of these things?
We are continuously making people aware of this, and when we look at so we can look at the numbers as on us and off us. How we can judge whether people are using the interoperability is if they are using QR codes issued by other institutions. Now there is a way, and that number is also published, and it's called off us. On us is if I am scanning a QR code issued by my own bank. Now, of course, this is random. If I go to a shop and that shop has my own bank's QR code, I can't help it, right? So you can't say that just because someone is scanning their own bank's QR code that they don't know about interoperability, because it just could be that the shop that they go to happens to have the QR code from their bank. Regardless, we can see that the off-us transactions are also on par, or actually the value is higher than the on-us transactions where Lanka QR is concerned. So in that sense, we can infer that people are aware of this interoperability, and they are kind of now increasingly blind to whether who is issuing the QR code. As long as it's Lanka QR, they know that they can scan it.
When credit cards were brought into the market fees were being passed on to the consumer, and central bank has made it very clear at multiple points that it is illegal to pass this transaction fee to the consumer. Now, how are we going to make sure that this behavior does not come into play with Lanka QR, and what's being done to enforce against this?
So, clarification on the credit cards being passed on, we have to acknowledge that there are many merchants who don't pass on the fee. So if we go to a supermarket or many stores that we go to, they don't pass on the fee.
Absolutely,
so
but we also
so
see
you
examples.
have those isolated incidents, some very small merchants who can't afford the 3% that is charged on the credit or debit card. Now for that reason only, we have mainly introduced Lanka QR, because Lanka QR is 1% maximum. That is a regulated MDR or merchant discount rate. So, issuer of Lanka QR or the acquirer, the person who is giving the Lanka QR code to the merchant can even give it free if they want to. And to further encourage this adoption of Lanka QR by merchants, from April we decided to make all transactions under 5,000 rupees free of charge. Now this is funded by the banks in order for small and medium businesses, especially small and medium businesses, to understand the convenience of using Lanka QR and getting money into their account directly. And above 5,000 it will be 1%. But once you get used to the convenience, you realize that you are paying for that convenience and that service. Now, with the 5,000, because we looked at the value of an average transaction. So most of the transactions are under 5,000 rupees. So for the small and medium businesses, the 5,000 will be sufficient for their transactions. So they won't have to pay the 1% so often, because most of their transactions are below 5,000. We are expecting that will lead on to a continuous adoption. The enforcement of, because you asked several questions in your question, so the enforcement of the 3% with regards to credit card. So the merchant agreement, when a merchant agrees to take on the POS machine, right? In that agreement with the acquirer, that is the licensed acquirer who gives the POS machine or the internet payment gateway, it says that they will not pass on the fee. So that is a violation of the agreement, and then the acquirer and the merchant has to look into it, and then the acquirer has certain actions that they can take to ensure the enforcement is being done.
You mentioned the transactions below 5,000 rupees carry no service fee or a transaction fee. Who bears the cost for this infrastructure, and how sustainable is this as we scale to where central bank wants to see digital payments in 5 years, 10 years?
So who bears the cost for the below 5,000 transactions? Right now it is the banks, the financial institutions are bearing it. So if all the banks are just bearing the cost, the banks are issuing the QR code. With regards to the infrastructure is operated by Lanka Pay, and Lanka Pay is owned by the central bank and all the commercial banks, and there is a funding mechanism for the infrastructure development and maintenance to take place. And from this fee also, general Lanka QR MDR, part of the fee also goes to Lanka Pay for the maintenance of the infrastructure.
Sri Lankans necessarily always tend to go for cash, and so is the case with businesses. How hard do you think it will be to move out of this habit, and what's the friction, given that transactions now do not carry a fee even?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question, Avin, because when we look at the numbers of digital payment adoption, now under CEFS, which is the Instant Payment Railway, for 2025 there was 23 trillion, the value of total transactions was around 23 trillion. But of that, most of them were fund transfers, which means the businesses in Sri Lanka are not using cash, as we also know, not using digital payments or Lanka QR or any of the other payment instruments. So how do we turn this around? There are several factors that we have identified, and one is habit. They are used to cash. They don't have the confidence to take on digital payments. Other is they fear that they will have certain negative repercussions by coming into the formal sector. But what we also find interestingly is that those who come into digital payments and start using digital payments generally don't go back. I mean, obviously they will continue to accept cash because that is accepted in the country, but they don't stop using digital payments because they understand the value and the convenience and the safety. Because when you're using cash, you're stuck at your till. You have to guard your money. And your business is limited to your physical environment. And we also see even some e-commerce service providers who use social media for their businesses, they will have cash on delivery, but they are paying the company who is doing the cash on delivery, right? So when they understand the savings that they get when they start accepting digital payments themselves, they really don't go back, especially if you're doing an e-commerce business. Your business is working when you're asleep as well, and you are accepting payments as you go. So a lot of the convenience what we are seeing is, despite the friction of trying to get people to start using it, but once they start using it, many of them stay on because they realize that their customers also can purchase more when they start using digital payments.
As the country goes digital, there are certain communities that we risk leaving out of this movement. The rural communities, the elderly, people that might not have a smartphone, a bank. Now, we saw our neighbors, India, do a perfect job in terms of market penetration. How do you think that will translate into the local community, and where do things stand?
So, again, this is something that we are trying to address, because in Sri Lanka, when you look at the crude financial inclusion numbers in terms of bank account ownership, it's fairly high. But that conversion into using the facilities provided in the that you get by having a bank account is not used so much. People will go to the bank and withdraw cash, and then the rest of their lives activities are done using cash. So this change. Now, to address this, you mentioned the rural, the communities, the elderly. So these are different segments that we have to target. So with regards to the rural sector, which is largely made up of SMEs, again, the Lanka QR solution was made targeting this group, because if you are a merchant, you don't need a smartphone. So, but increasingly in Sri Lanka, after COVID, a lot of people do have smartphones. The merchant only needs to get an SMS to confirm the transaction, and the Lanka QR code is free. The sticker code is free of charge. So it's a very low cost method that can reach the rural communities. Of course, there are some infrastructure issues that we will need to address, like better internet connectivity, because to do something like Lanka QR or any electronic payment method, you need good internet, and that is something that the country will need to address going through this digitalization process. And with groups like the elderly, I think it's important. It's generational. What we are seeing is digital payment adoption is generational, and with time we find that the elderly also slowly become familiar. They also use cards quite a lot. So that adoption is happening, and it's a gradual transition that will take place from group to group. And we also look at targeting the school children and the university students, because we also see, if you go to a supermarket, sometimes young people are using cash. They have a smartphone, they have all the apps, but they use cash at the till. So it's not only one group. Across the board in Sri Lanka, we need to increase awareness and make it normal to use digital payments, because most people are not comfortable using digital payments.
I think something that we cannot avoid talking about here is, while we're on the topic, is literacy and safety around these payments. Have you all seen any major incidents or major exploitations of Lanka QR in the past few months, especially? And what's the stance and where do we stand on things like scams around Lanka QR?
Lanka QR is actually probably one of the safest ways to pay, because the Lanka QR code is made according to EMB core standards. That's an international security standard. So the code itself is very safe, and you're using your mobile app. Now in Sri Lanka, all the mobile apps, the payment and banking mobile apps, have to comply with a minimum compliance standard that has been issued by the central bank, and that ensures the security of the app. And unlike other digital payment methods like cards, or if you're using another channel to transact digitally, here you don't expose your instrument. So it's you scan with your phone, so you don't have to give anything to the merchant as well. So, and the merchant doesn't need to give any information like a bank account number or anything to the customer as well. So both parties are actually quite safe. And when we pay, we have to check the name of the merchant, whether it's the same merchant. Now we have not had any reported incidents of someone, let's say, fraudulently pasting a QR code, a fraudulent QR code on top of another code. But the thing is, the QR code that our apps can scan are the Lanka QR codes. So it can't be another QR code. But it can only be someone, let's say the shop next door, coming and pasting it or something like that. But for that reason, you have to check the name, whether you're paying the right person.
What's the acknowledgement, or what sort of confirmation does the vendor get? Now we have seen in neighboring countries there are often POS machines that have voice-enabled transaction confirmations that are very loud and very hard to miss. Do we have anything like that in play when using a mobile phone on our end?
Thanks for that question, because that is one of the policy initiatives that we are trying to drive at the moment, to introduce what I think it's commonly called the sound box. So that, because we've noticed that a lot of the cashiers don't have the phone near them because the owner has the phone. So for the cashier, it's a very awkward situation if someone wants to pay with Lanka QR and then they don't have the phone to check the confirmation. So we have spoken with the financial institutions, and they are in the process of introducing these sound boxes in Sri Lanka as well.
Let's talk digital adoption in general. Now, if we look at the rest of the world, a standard is Google Pay and Apple Pay. We see Google Pay making a gradual movement into the country. Where does Sri Lanka stand in terms of at least the regulatory approvals in bringing these technologies to the country?
If you bring in an app, it has to comply with the minimum compliance standard. You can't launch an app in Sri Lanka without complying with the minimum compliance standards issued by the central bank. In case of a wallet where you connect a card, right, similar to Google Pay, Apple Pay, there is the relationship is with the financial institution, and if the financial institution feels that that business model requires central bank regulatory approval, then they can forward the business model to us, and we can see whether, because these are innovative products, so depending on the product, some aspects may need regulatory clearance, but if the final effect is similar to acquiring a card, then it can go through a licensed acquirer.
But some of these technologies often require large investments or large compliance at a national level for these technology providers to come into a country as well. Has any effort been made towards a movement of that sort?
Can you explain what you mean?
Adoption of these technologies, specifically Apple Pay, often requires compliance and movements of the national level for these technology providers to come into a country and start supporting and plugging in payment providers from that specific country. Has any effort been made on that front from Sri Lanka?
When you say compliance, what do you mean?
Compliance in the sense that the central bank or the national payment regulatory body of that country clearing off those payments.
So they Apple Pay requiring to be
Compliant with
So
central
that's
bank.
what I said. It depends on the business model and the service that they're providing. If there is a wallet where they are storing funds, then there is a regulatory clearance that they require. But if they are coming with like an acquiring model, a card acquiring model, then already they can partner with licensed acquirers because the acquirers are already licensed. So depending on what service you're providing, that will change what kind of compliance requirements there is.
What's the message to consumers? What would you say to them to persuade them right now to switch to GovPay or digital payments, Lanka QR, and adopt or be a part of this movement?
So when we take digital payments, it's obviously a very large area. In Sri Lanka, it's a very vibrant ecosystem and there are many channels to pay. So we have apps, we have cards, internet banking through which you can make GovPay payments, you can pay your taxes, customs payments, everything can be paid instantly from your bank account. And then we have newer products like Pay by Link or Request to Pay, which is called PayMe. Just Pay enables interoperability across all the apps. So in this environment, there are lots of opportunities. What we are seeing is that largely the business end, the retail end is not making very good use of it. And even customers, the general public, many of them don't use the full potential of digital payments, how it can improve their quality of life. Very simply, if you are using digital payments, the bank, you have a better relationship with the bank because if you need credit to improve your business or something like that, then the bank has a record of how your business is taking place. If you're doing a cash business, it's very difficult to go to the bank and show what your business is. So there are several advantages like that. Even as a customer, the safety, the convenience that comes with it, and again, your financial services profile can improve if you use digital payments. So really what is very important for Sri Lankans is to adopt digital payments and also to use it safely because we know that there are scams going on. So that literacy is also important. How do we ensure that we are using this safely? Now, one of the common mistakes people make, I think all of us have heard this multiple times, which is sharing the OTP with unknown parties, right? So people should remember OTP is there to authenticate whether it's actually you that's making that transaction. So if you give it to someone else, it becomes that person who's making the transaction. You are enabling someone to impersonate you, right? And another thing is we see a lot of the scams, they have unbelievable offers or some urgent request with a link.
Too good to be true often.
Exactly, and they are generally not true. So, and people go and click these links, and these links will ask for your confidential information, they will ask for your sometimes bank login details, sometimes they will take you to a fake website that looks like your bank's website. Right? So some of the digital literacy aspects that people should know is if you want to log into your bank, on your own type in the bank's URL and log into your bank. Don't ever go through a link that someone else has provided to go to your bank account. And also don't type in your bank login details elsewhere because only you should know it. And another new scam that is coming in is where people download apps, malicious apps, again for these unbelievable offers, or sometimes it can be job appointments for jobs that don't exist. And they give permission to these apps, they give full control to these apps to take over their phone. And then the scammer can again impersonate you and take total control of your phone, access your bank login information, and then carry out fraudulent financial transactions. So that basic sort of digital hygiene, how do we use digital technology properly, that literacy is also important. As much as we should use the full potential of digital payments, we should also know how to use it safely. So that, because this is our money, just the way that we would protect our wallet, we should protect our phone, not just the app alone. And very important, regarding the app downloads, you should only download apps from the official Play Store or App Store. If someone is asking you to download an app from a link, then you should be very careful and be very cautious about the permissions that you're giving. If you're giving, if that app is asking permission for your SMS, to read your SMS, that means they could see your OTPs. If they are asking permission for full accessibility of your phone, then they have full access to what's going on in your phone. So you have to be very careful, because this is the new age, this is the digital age. We have to learn how to use our phone. If we don't do that, and if we just carelessly press OK for every notification that comes, we could be just signing off our bank account to someone else. So with that, with those safety practices, I think it's really important that Sri Lanka gears itself to adopt digitalization, and one fundamental requirement is to be able to use digital payments, because going forward the world is digitalizing, and as an economy, for us to develop, we need to take this path.
On that note, this episode of The Exchange comes to an end. I'm Avin Indrasoma for Hiru News. Thank you for watching.